Hello chess friends and welcome to Yazadov's chess channel and welcome to the Chessable Masters tournament in 2020. We're again in the quarterfinal stage. It's Liren versus Hikaru Nakamura. So this is now the last quarterfinal match game. In the first match game, Liren won the game. Then in the second match game, Hikaru took the win. So now this is really the decisive match game. Who wins this game, of course, will move up into the semifinals, where already Magnus Carlsen, Jan Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri are. So it's a great and epic battle, I think, because Hikaru Nakamura and Liren have really this similar style, this great attacking style. This was really a great clash in this quarterfinal stage. So this is now the game 4. In the last day, Liren took the lead with one win. Hikaru managed to get only one draw, and it was really now time for Hikaru Nakamura to make something happen. If Hikaru loses this game, then Liren will move up in the semifinals. So let's check out the game. We have d4 by Ding and g6 by Hikaru. So Hikaru is trying here sort of a King's Indian because he's very aggressive in this opening. Although I think in this top grandmaster level, in this classical time format, the King's Indian is not so often played because there are some issues of the King's Indian. I played the King's Indian myself, and I'm really familiar with this bad things that can happen to you in a King's Indian. One of the bad things can be sometimes the bad bishop on f8. I'm just pointing you that out because we will have a similar position in this particular game. Here after the move c4, we have bishop to g7, e4, d6, knight to c3, still common theory, and after knight to f6, knight to f3, after castling, and bishop to e2. The most aggressive way, of course, of the King's Indian is to play the move e5 immediately, and now Liren castles. So this is a delaying move by Ding. Here, maybe the best way for black to proceed is to immediately take e takes d4. But here, after the move knight to c6, which is sort of a provocative move, we want to white to play finally the move d5. Then the position in the center would be blocked. Then the position in the center would be static, wouldn't be so dynamic. This is still common theory, of course, of the King's Indian. We have the move d5 by Ding and knight to e7 here by Hikaru, and we have b4. So this is the so-called bayonet attack, and the bayonet attack comes really with this common idea of the King's Indian, because if we already noticed that we have now this blocked pawn structure in the center, so it's this central setup, it means that white is trying to be fast on the queen side, because these pawns are really showing us the direction of the attack. Black is again trying to coordinate the attack on the king side, so where black has the advantage, because here the direction of the attack is of course because of this pawn structure on the king side. So that's why this bayonet attack comes immediately with the idea to crack the position around this square c5. So it's a possibility. I myself like to play the move knight to h5 immediately, because there is one problem for white that white needs to take care of course. It's this long diagonal of the dark square bishop, because then you could have some opportunities to maybe place your knight on f4 after bishop takes f4 or something else. If a knight maybe takes out your knight on f4, then this dark square diagonal would be liberated here, and we could have some tactics on the rook on a1. So but you could also try sometimes, I've seen also the move a5 immediately, which isn't a problem for white, I think. If you maybe have some troubles and yourself are a bayonet attack player and your opponent plays the move a5, you shouldn't be so scared, I think, because you have the immediate opportunity to play the move bishop to a3. I think white is perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is, of course, to play the move a3, because after a takes b4, you cannot recapture with the pawn. Then we would have some tactics here on the a file. So, as said, best way here, bishop to a3 after a takes b4, bishop takes b4, and black could fix the position with the move b6, trying to prevent this c5 idea. As I said, the main goal in the bayonet attack and in every King's Indian attack, when the position is so blocked out in the center, is to crack really the position around the square c5. But I think white can immediately try to push further on the queen side with a4, a5, and then split some pawns, and then finally crack the position with the move c5. So I think in this opposite side attack game, white is always a little bit faster. So that's why here after the move b4, Hikaru tries a very fast way to make something happen here on the king side, because as I said, black is trying to make this move f5, f4, g5, g4, really create a pawn storm on the king side, trying to checkmate even white's king. So here Hikaru plays this immediately idea, knight to e8, and then followed with f5. So here you see Liren is not losing any tempos, a4 simply pushing further, and we have now f5. This is now really an opposite side attack game. As I said, white is pushing on the queen side, black is pushing on the king side, and we have now a5. We have knight to f6, and now rook to e1. If you take here f takes e4, it's not such a powerful idea, I think, here for black. First of all, what black wants to do is to push the pawn on f4. This move is really the main idea of the King's Indian, because we want to have this pawn storm. If you take here f takes e4, then okay, you have some tempos, but I think the position on the king side is a little bit splashed. All of the dynamics will be only on the queen side, because we have now the opportunity to play knight to g5. We will take this pawn eventually. Here you could try maybe knight to f5, but after knight to e4 you could try maybe knight to d4. But I really like this positional idea, and as I said at the beginning of the video, if the position is a little bit more static, like in this one, the position, I don't think it's so dynamic anymore, that we have now the immediate opportunity to go into positional trades of pieces with bishop to g5. Let's see a possible continuation, knight to e2, after queen to e2 maybe bishop to d7. But I simply like this idea to get rid of this knight, because the knight has always the opportunity to maybe go somehow into the game. Here after bishop to f6, here I really favor the knights, because the knights are really controlling the whole center, and now our goal to crack the position around the c5 is really possible. This is a bad bishop, it's blocked out by its own pawn. This bishop, although it has a great activity, but this bishop would only work if this pawns could roll somehow, and you see we don't have anymore the f pawn, so I don't think that black has here really a good game. So after the move rook to e1, you see h6 played by Hikaru, because one of the main threats in the Bayonet attack, I've played now many times, sometimes white is trying to play knight to g5 and then knight to e6. After bishop to e6 and d takes e6, it will be very hard for black to capture the pawn, because if you try something like queen to e8, queen to c8 in order to attack this pawn, then we would have the opportunity to jump with our knight on d5 and attack here the pawn on c7. I just want you to imagine this move order. The c7 could be really a problematic thing, so also the d5 would be opened after a potential d takes e6. So that's why h6 played by Hikaru, preventing this knight to g5 idea. But when we play this opposite side attack games, you don't want to lose tempos, and now Liren plays e takes f5, and here comes I think already the critical moment of the game, because here Liren shouldn't have taken here this pawn on f5. Liren should have maybe proceed here with knight to d2 or similar ideas. So basically this e takes f5 was an inaccuracy by Ding, and here Hikaru takes with the wrong piece. Hikaru takes with the bishop on f5. A better idea here is to take with the knight on f5. It's much more powerful, because now we want to make this pawn roll here. We want to bring the pawn here on e4. After potential bishop to b2, let's imagine this position in which white really tries to develop the dark square bishop, which would be a natural idea. You see the problems now. After e4, knight to d2 would be a necessary move, but now e3 is really cracking the position immediately. After something like f takes e3, you see the knight comes very actively into the game. What white could do here in order to prevent this e4 idea is maybe to play knight to d2 immediately, but I again like this move e4, and because the problem is now, let's flip the board a little bit, because after knight to e4, knight takes e4, knight from c to e4 is not a possibility, because the rook is hanging. And now after a couple of moves, I think black can really play something like rook to e8 and hang on to this very annoying pawn on e4. So it would be a comfortable game, I think, here for black. Black still could have the opportunity to push the pawns, maybe g5, h5, g4, h4. So really create a pawn storm here, and this pawn would be really kicking away all of these minor pieces of white. So here in the game, Hikaru takes with the wrong piece. He took with the bishop, so he didn't take with the knight. And you see now, after potential e4 move, which would be a good move, white has always the opportunity to jump with the knight on d4, because the knight is not anymore on f5. So again, white would have some activity in the game. Rook to a2 was played by Ding, and now g5. So okay, this is an attack, of course, against white's knight. What black is trying to do is to play the move g4 here, but here Ding Liren prevents this idea. Queen to e8 played by Hikaru. If you try g4 immediately, it's a problematic position here for black, because we can simply take h takes g4 after bishop takes g4. Now again, I'm pointing out this bad bishop situation, this bad bishop on g7, because it's blocked out here by this pawn on e5. We could again go into positional trades of pieces with knight to h4, simply forcing now black to take after bishop takes e2, queen to e2. And now if we evaluate this position, we could still play something like knight to e4, bishop to b2, even bishop to e3 is a possibility. This bishop is really bad bishop, and we still have the possibility here, because the only flexibility now on the board is on the queen side. So it's time for us to make our goal happen. It's of course the move c5. So that's why in the game, queen to e8 played by Hikaru. So Hikaru didn't proceed with the move g4. Here knight to h2 was played by Ding, again with this positional idea. Very cool idea here by Ding to play knight to g4 after knight takes g4, bishop takes g4, again forcing the trades of like square bishops, because this like square bishop of Hikaru's has a great activity here all over the board. As I said, the bad bishop is the bishop on g7, so we want to get rid of our opponent's good bishop and forcing him to continue with his bad bishop on g7. So a6 played by Hikaru, stopping a little bit further here Ding Liren's attack on b5, because there are also some tactical threats to play knight to b5. Then your c7 pawn is hanging. If you try to protect it with the rook, then your a7 pawn is hanging. So what Hikaru tried with the move queen to e8 is to get the queen somewhere here, maybe to g6, and finally maybe play something like h5 and then follow out with g4 to crack the position on the king side. But that's why this a6 is so far necessary. And now knight to g4, great positional move by Ding Liren, really forcing the trades of knights. Bishop to g6 was played, and now you see Ding goes knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, and now again with the same idea. We want to get rid of this good bishops on the board, which is of course the light square bishop, and force really Hikaru to continue with his bad bishop on f6. So knight to f5, we have knight to e4. Here in the game, bishop to g7 was played. If you try something like knight to d4, it's again a good position, I think, for white, because we would have the opportunity to force now really the trades of bishops. After bishop takes d3, we have queen to d3, and after something like bishop to g7, bishop to e3, I think is perfectly fine. You are forced to get out of this e-file mess, maybe something like queen to d7, but I think bishop takes d4 is perfectly fine. After e takes d4, knight to e4, and you see this knight is the best now piece on the board. We can cement it after that with f3. There's no minor piece that can really kick away this knight, although black has this annoying pawn on d4, but now it's really time for us to make something happen here with c5, b5, a6. So it will be a perfect position for the knight. The knight is centralized. It cannot be, as I said, attacked by any minor piece, by any piece on the board. Still, this is a bad bishop because it's again blocked out by its own pawn, so it's a favorable continuation here for white. So that's why here bishop to g7, we have f3, again with a similar idea. We're fixing simply the position around our great knight on e4. Here in the game, queen to f7 was played. Now rook to f2, because there are of course some discovered attack possibilities against the queen here if the position opens on the f file, if black tries, if the position allows it, of course, h4 g4, then after potential f takes g4, there could be some tactics on the f file against the queen. So rook to d8, we have bishop to b1, really improving the position of the bishop, and now king to h8 by Hikaru, and now bishop to b2. We have knight to h4 by Hikaru, and now finally this move b5. So It's really a good position here for white. As I said, I think always here that black's attack on the king side, as I said in the beginning, black is really trying to force some attacks on the king side. I think the attack is a little bit splashed now. Nothing can happen here. Liren played on a very nice blockade here, and now, as I said, the only flexibility is on the queen side. b5, perfect attack. Bishop to f5, we have b6, really trying to split some pawns here, and after knight to g6, we have g3. This is a very important move which takes care of this potential knight to f4 outpost. If this knight comes on f4, then it's a problematic thing, but because you cannot take, bishop takes h3, that's the problem. You get rook to h2. Great tactics here by Liren, what he has prepared. If you retreat, then you get knight to g5, and it's, I think, game over here for black. After potential maybe queen to f6, you see bishop to f5, and after something like queen to g5, we could simply retreat with our bishop, because we would continue then follow with rook to g2 and maybe attack this knight. So there's really no good way how to get these pieces active, so that's why here Hikaru didn't fall for this trick here that Liren has prepared. He played simply c takes b6, and then we have a takes b6, and now knight to e7. What Hikaru has noticed that he has to really maneuver the knight here on c8, because the d6 pawn is weak. Bishop to a3 is a serious threat. As I said, bishop to a3, knight to c8, and now queen to b3. It's a perfect now attacking formation here for Liren. As I said, there are simply no good tempos now for black. h5 is not a possibility, or g5 pawn is hanging. So in the game, bishop to h7 played by Hikaru, and now rook to d1. We have bishop to g8, and now king to g2. Very nice move, which of course protects further our pawn on f3. We want to play, of course, much more freely with our queen. We don't want to have maybe some tactics here around this weak pawn f3. So bishop to h7, we have now finally c5, and this is now the main idea. You see how you have to prepare these moves in this opposite side attack games. c5 is really cracking now the position on the queen side. Great attack by Liren. We have d takes c5, knight takes c5, and the problem is now after bishop to b1 and queen to b1, rook to b1, you cannot take this pawn. That's a great tactic here that Liren has prepared, because you get knight takes b7. The discovered attack on the rook. Let's see the best continuation what black could do here. Rook to b5, but now after a trades of queens, queen takes f7, rook takes f7, and now rook takes b5. The problem is now that you cannot take the rook on b5 with the pawn, because you get the monster move knight to d8. With a direct attack on the rook, wherever you move, then you get b7, and you're really forced to give up, because if you move the knight somewhere, we'll simply promote to queen. So great tactics, as I said, by Liren, what he has prepared here. This is really sort of a necessary tactic that you have to see on the board, because after this move rook to b1 and rook to e8, of course the Hikaru Nakamura gets out of the range of the bishop. Now we have this great extra tempo. That's why I really like this tactic. We have this extra tempo. Now we can jump with our knight on e6, and this is really sort of an octopus knight. This knight cannot be attacked by any minor piece anymore, because this bishop on a3 is waiting a little bit for this knight. Wherever this knight jumps on d6, e7, we'll simply take it out, and again we would have really a great outpost of the knight, and black has a bad bishop, which is again blocked out by this pawn on e5. So it's a great strategy to simply play against such a bad piece here by Liren. Great positional game, and also tactical game, you see, by Ding. And here comes rook to d7, and now rook to c1, of course, taking over on the c file, because the c file is open. And now comes this move knight to e7, and of course we don't want this knight to be on the board. Now after bishop takes e7, we have queen to e7, and now rook to c7, queen to d6, and now rook to c2, bishop to f6, and now here after the move queen to a4. In this position Hikaru resigned. So the problem is now in this position that you have to retreat with your rook somewhere, maybe to e7, and now we can simply take. If you take with the queen, then the problem is you get here rook to c7, and the queen is a little bit trapped here, so that's why black is forced maybe here to take with the rook. Rook takes e7, but now you get rook to c8. If you don't want to lose the queen, you have to play something like king to h7, and now you get checkmated with queen to e4. So as said, let's go back here after the move queen to a4. In this position, Hikaru resigned, and Liren moves up into the semifinals of this very, very nice tournament. So if I watch now the semifinals, I think it's deserved, because today it was simply Liren's day. He played much, much better than Hikaru. This was a great game. Also, I think a very instructive chess game with these elements, how to play against this bad bishop with his positional trades of pieces. Great attack, and that's why we'll have now some great semifinals. Magnus Carlsen against Jan Nepomniachtchi and Liren against Anish Giri. So it will be a perfect semifinals in this very, very nice tournament. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games with some more games from some other tournaments. And you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.